There are women in this country who ask for help, and the system hears them and then does nothing. Sometimes they are failed quietly, in courtrooms, in police stations, in hospitals where the harder questions never get asked. And sometimes they are failed in the most irreversible way possible. Her name was Sarah Henshaw, 31 years old, 2 daughters, an infectious laugh. Friends described her as outgoing, fun-loving, the kind of person who fills a room just by being in it. She spent years trying to escape a man who wanted to own her, and she finally found the strength to walk away. That strength may have been what got her killed. This is not just a story about one night. This is a story about a decade of warning signs that nobody stopped. A key that was never returned. A lock that was never changed. A system that looked the other way. And a man who learned over and over and over again that there were no consequences. We are going to tell Sarah's story in full. Not just how she died, but everything that came before it. Because she deserves that. Her daughters deserve that. And if anything you hear today sounds familiar in your own life, or in someone else's, please reach out. This story does not have to keep repeating. Before we go anywhere near that Tuesday night, before we talk about the van, and the lady, and the phone data, I need you to know who Sarah was. Not just how she died, who she was, because it matters. It matters more than most people think when they sit down to watch something like this. Sarah Henshaw grew up in Ilkeston, Derbyshire, a regular town, regular streets, the kind of place where everybody knows a little bit of everybody else's business. She was a mum, a devoted, hands-on mum to 2 little girls who needed her every single day. And she was a daughter. Her mother, Lorraine, was one of the people closest to her in the world. The kind of relationship where a mother can clock something is wrong before anyone else even notices. She was a sister. Her sister, Kelsey, would later stand in a courtroom and say that Sarah's death meant the biggest piece of us is missing. 3 words. The biggest piece. Let that land. And she was a friend. The kind of friend people describe with a specific kind of sadness, the kind that comes from knowing that laugh is never coming back. Outgoing, fun-loving, the infectious laugh that the judge himself would mention when he sentenced the man who killed her. That was Sarah. A real person, with a real life, with daughters who needed her, and she spent years inside something that was destroying her quietly. A relationship built on control, on fear, on one man's obsessive need to possess her completely. But here is the thing about Sarah Henshaw that I need you to carry with you through every chapter of this story. She fought back, not with violence, not with confrontation, with resolve. Quietly, painfully, bravely, she kept fighting to get free, and she nearly made it. It was 2012. Sarah introduced a man named Darren Hall to her mother, Lorraine. Now, Sarah was already a single mum at this point, 1 daughter, and she carried the kind of cautious hope you carry when you want things to be different this time. You know that feeling. You want to believe. Lorraine wanted to believe too, but she couldn't, because from the very beginning, day 1, she noticed things. The way Darren spoke over Sarah, the way he answered questions that were directed at her, the way he always seemed to know where she was going, who she was going with, and when she'd be back. Now, most people would look at that and call it attentiveness, right? He's just interested in her life. He just cares. No, that is not care. That is surveillance, dressed up as love. And Lorraine saw it. She felt it. But what can you do? Your daughter is happy, or at least she says she is. The relationship is new. You tell yourself maybe you're reading it wrong. So you watch, and you wait. Now, coercive control, and I want to take a moment here because this is critical to understanding everything that follows. Coercive control became a criminal offence under the Serious Crime Act in England and Wales in 2015. And the reason that law was created is because researchers and survivors had been saying the same thing for decades. The most dangerous abusers are not always the ones who hit the hardest. They are the ones who control the most completely. Because physical violence leaves evidence, but control leaves nothing you can photograph, nothing you can point to in a courtroom. It's a look, it's a tone, it's the slow, deliberate shrinking of another person's world until you are the only thing left in it. That is what Darren Hall was doing. From 2012, from the very beginning, he was building walls around Sarah and calling them love. By 2016, Sarah was pregnant, Darren's child, their second daughter together. And whatever mask Darren Hall had been wearing in those early years, it was gone now. The relationship had turned physical. And here is where I need you to pause and really hear what I'm about to say. During Sarah's pregnancy, while she was carrying his child, Darren Hall pushed her in the stomach. She was taken to hospital. The baby was unharmed. But let's be absolutely clear about what that moment told us. That act told us everything. Everything about who this man was. Everything about what he was capable of. Everything about where this was going. And here is the part that should make you angry. Are you ready? Nothing happened. No formal intervention. No legal consequence. No system that stepped in and said, "You assaulted a pregnant woman. You answer for that." Nothing. Now, I'm not here to lay blame at any single officer's feet. The reality of domestic abuse cases, especially in 2016, is complicated. Victims don't always make statements. Cases are difficult to prosecute. I understand that. But here's the thing. Abusers who face no consequences don't learn their behavior is wrong. They learn it is permitted. And Darren Hall learned exactly that. He pushed Sarah while she was pregnant. Nothing happened. So the message he received, the lesson that was taught to him, was that he could. That lesson would follow them all the way to June 20th, 2023. Around 2018, Sarah ended the relationship. She walked away. And I want you to understand what that took. Leaving an abusive partner when you have children in the home, when he has spent years cutting off your friendships, undermining your confidence, making you feel like you cannot survive without him, that is not a simple decision. It is one of the most dangerous, most complicated, most terrifying things a person in that situation can attempt. And Sarah did it. She reclaimed her home on Norman Street in Ilkeston. She started the work of rebuilding her life as a single mum to 2 little girls. She was getting out. But one thing was left unresolved. Darren Hall still had a key to her house. He never gave it back. The locks were never changed. Now, I need you to sit with that for a moment, because that key, that one small piece of metal, was not just a key. In the context of this relationship, it was a statement. It was Darren Hall saying, "This separation is not real, not to me. I still have access. I still have power. I can walk into your home whenever I choose to, and you cannot stop me." That key was not carelessness. It was a declaration. Forensic psychologists have a term for this kind of behavior. They call it an identity threat response. When an abuser's victim leaves, truly leaves, it doesn't just hurt their feelings. It destabilizes their entire sense of who they are. Because men like Darren Hall build their identity around domination, around ownership of another person. And when that person tries to walk away, the key is their way of saying, "I haven't accepted this. I never will." Some contact continued in the years after the split. They shared a daughter. Co-parenting with an abusive ex-partner is one of the most difficult situations imaginable. It gives the abuser a permanent, legitimate-sounding reason to stay present, a reason to call, a reason to show up, a reason to keep that thread of control attached long after everything else said it was over. April 2022, Sarah's grandfather died. He was 71 years old. Now, grief does something to people. Sometimes it breaks you, and sometimes It strips everything back and shows you exactly what matters and exactly what doesn't. For Sarah, it was the second one. In the aftermath of losing her grandfather, she made a decision. She was done, completely, permanently, finally. No more grey areas around co-parenting, no more contact, no more thread connecting her to Darren Hall. She was cutting him out of her life for good. Now, for most people, being told it is truly over is painful. It hurts. But eventually, most people accept it. They grieve and they move on. For Darren Hall, this was something else entirely, because his entire sense of himself, his identity, his sense of control, his sense of purpose, was built on his ability to dominate Sarah. And when she drew that line clearly, definitively, finally, she wasn't just rejecting him. In his mind, she was threatening him. She was taking away the thing he had organized his entire existence around. I want you to hear the research on this, because it is not opinion. It is not assumption. The data on intimate partner homicide is consistent and unambiguous. The period following a victim's decision to permanently separate is statistically the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship. The more clearly she communicates that it is truly over, the more dangerous he becomes. Sarah was doing the right thing, the brave thing, the necessary thing. And in the mind of Darren Hall, she had just made herself his target. Tuesday, the 20th of June, 2023. Sarah spent the earlier part of the day with a friend. An ordinary afternoon. Nothing dramatic, nothing unusual. She was last captured on CCTV at around 9 o'clock in the evening near her home on Norman Street. That footage would later become the last known public image of Sarah Henshaw alive. She went home, and before 10 o'clock that evening, the front door opened, not by her hand, by Darren Hall's, using the key he had never given back. Now, a friend was present in the house when he let himself in. And that friend later confirmed to investigators that Sarah told Darren directly, "Leave. Get out." He refused. He sat down. He stayed. They ate dinner. And the atmosphere in that house. Anyone who has lived inside an abusive relationship will know exactly what I mean when I describe it. That loaded, heavy, suffocating kind of tension. The kind where every word is careful, every movement is measured, because you don't know what might set it off. Sarah held herself together. She drove her friend home. And then she came back to Norman Street, back to her own house, alone, with him waiting inside. At 10:02 in the evening, Sarah exchanged messages with her best friend. At 10:09, she sent her final message, the last time she communicated with anyone who loved her. At 10:37, her best friend followed up, "Are you okay?" The reply never came. Her best friend spent the rest of that night and the days that followed in a state of growing, terrible certainty. The kind that starts as a nagging worry and builds, minute by minute, into the understanding that something irreversible has happened. She was right. Now, a neighbor living close to Sarah's home heard something that night she would never forget. A loud bang, coming from the direction of the bedroom, then silence. Complete silence. The kind that does not feel like peace. She messaged Sarah. She received a reply. The dog had suffered a seizure. Everything was fine. Plausible enough. Just about. What she could not have known was that Sarah did not send that message. Darren Hall was sitting in that house with Sarah's phone in his hand. He unlocked it, wrote a message, in her voice, pretending to be her, and sent it, deliberately, calmly, not in a panic, deliberately, to buy himself time. Think about what that requires. Think about the state of mind that allows a person to do something like that. This is not a man overwhelmed by grief. This is not a man paralyzed by shock. This is a man whose first instinct in the immediate aftermath of killing the mother of his child was control. The same control he had exercised over Sarah for over a decade. now turned towards self-preservation. In the early hours of June the 21st, the neighbor was awake again. She looked out of her window. She saw Darren Hall standing at the back of his van, rear doors open. Then he closed them, got in, and drove away into the dark. What she had witnessed, without any way of knowing, it was the final stage of Darren Hall's plan to make Sarah disappear. Phone data would later show his device connecting to Sarah's home Wi-Fi at 1:50 in the morning, then to his van's GPS system. The data places him traveling north on the Moan, exiting at junction 29, stopping at a lay-by on the A617 toward Chesterfield, a remote stretch of road, dark, quiet. The kind of place you only go at 2 o'clock in the morning if you have a very specific reason to be there. Over approximately 9 minutes at that lay-by, his phone torch was activated repeatedly. His health app recorded 266 steps. 266 steps at 2 in the morning. In stark contrast to his normal pattern of zero movement between midnight and 6 in the morning, someone was working in the dark, moving deliberately, doing something that required both light and effort. He was not in shock. He was not falling apart. He was solving a problem. In the days that followed, Hall returned to Ilkeston and told people Sarah had simply left. He disposed of her belongings, her dressing gown, her slippers later found in a nearby skip. Intimate things, small things, the kind of things that tell their own quiet story about a life that was there and then suddenly wasn't. He told her neighbor he had no idea where she'd gone. He offered no explanation for why her car was still parked outside. He said some of her belongings were missing, trying to build the fiction that she had walked out of her own life by choice. And in further police interviews, when the investigation was already underway, he told officers he didn't know where Sarah was, and that it was their job to find her. That line, their job to find her. That is the line of a man who believed he had covered his tracks. He hadn't. The 23rd of June, 2023, 3 full days after Sarah was last seen alive. That is when police were finally contacted with concerns about her welfare. Officers forced entry to the flat on Norman Street, and what they found told a story all by itself. A bucket, a mop, bleach, evidence of urgent, deliberate cleaning, a broken necklace with an elephant charm, Sarah's. 23 items were seized in total. Phones, a laptop, clothing, a blue tarpaulin, her dressing gown and slippers recovered separately from a nearby skip. Darren Hall was arrested on suspicion of murder on the 23rd of June. Phone data directed investigators to the A617 lay-by near Moan Junction 29. A specialist search team was deployed. And in the early hours of the 26th of June, in woodland, just 5 meters from the road, they found Sarah. Her body in an advanced state of decomposition, fragments of blue tarpaulin nearby, matching the one recovered from her home, the same tarpaulin, the same man, the same calculated cruelty. The trial of Darren Hall opened on the 4th of December, 2023, at Derby Crown Court. It lasted approximately 2 weeks. Now, the prosecution faced a genuine challenge. Because Sarah's body had been in that woodland for 6 days before it was found, the decomposition was severe. Pathologists could not establish a definitive cause of death, but the court heard that bruising found on Sarah's neck was consistent in width with a dressing gown cord. And the case did not rest on pathology alone. It rested on the totality. The phone data placing Hall at the scene and at the disposal site, the forensic match between the 2 tarpaulin pieces, the neighbor who heard the bang and later saw Hall loading his van at 2 in the morning, the messages sent from Sarah's phone after her death, the cleaning materials, the broken necklace, the years of abuse that framed everything else. Hall's defense? Sarah had fallen down the stairs. An accident. He panicked. And in that panic, he moved her body to a remote lay-by, disposed of her belongings, sent messages from her phone to her friends, cleaned the scene with bleach, and went back to his daily life while her family feared the worst. Okay, let's look at that. Panic is real. I am not dismissing the concept of panic, but what Hall described was not panic. Every step he took that night required a decision. Choosing which road to take. Bringing a tarpaulin. Activating a phone torch to work in darkness for 9 minutes. Unlocking a dead woman's phone and writing a message in her voice. Those are not the actions of someone who doesn't know what to do. Those are the actions of someone who knows exactly what he is doing and is doing it without hesitation. His story also changed. First came flat denial. The position of a man who believes he has covered his tracks well enough. Then, when the evidence made denial impossible, came the accident narrative, the defense of a man recalibrating in real time. Neither version looked like grief. Both versions looked like strategy. Detective Inspector Maria Pleece, who led the investigation, said, "Darren Hall is a manipulative, deceiving, and dangerous individual. Only 2 people know what exactly happened that night. Sarah cannot tell us, and Hall refuses to give a factual account of events. What we can be sure of is that Sarah's life ended at his hand." The jury deliberated for approximately 3 hours, and they returned a verdict of guilty to murder. Darren Hall, carpet fitter, ex-partner, convicted murderer, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum tariff of 17 years before any eligibility for parole. Sentencing him, Mr. Justice Goss said, "Sarah Henshaw was 31 years of age. She was a loud, outgoing, and fun-loving person with an infectious laugh. The harm you have done and the suffering you have caused can never be undone by any sentence of this court." Darren Hall is currently held at HMP Nottingham. The public gallery at Derby Crown Court was packed throughout the entire trial. Every single day, Sarah's family showed up. Her mother, Lorraine, the woman who had noticed something was wrong back in 2012, described Darren Hall as a monster who disposed of her daughter's body like a piece of rubbish. She said, "All Sarah ever wanted was stability, and to settle down with a partner who loved her." Her sister, Kelsey, called Hall a cruel and selfish man and said that her family visited a medium after Sarah's death, who told them Sarah would not be at peace until justice was done. I don't know what you believe about that, but I know what it means to a grieving family grasping for any sign that their person is still somewhere. That she knows. Over £9,000 was raised by the Ilkeston community for Sarah's funeral and to support her 2 daughters. 2 little girls who will grow up without their mother, who will ask questions one day that nobody will be able to fully answer. Now, I want to close this the right way, because this is not simply the story of one man's violence. It never is. Go back through the timeline. 2012, Lorraine notices the controlling behavior on day 1. 2016, Hall physically assaults a pregnant Sarah. She is hospitalized. No prosecution follows. 2018, Sarah leaves. The key is never returned. The locks are never changed. 2022, Sarah makes her final decision. She cuts contact. She draws the line. June the 20th, 2023. Hall lets himself in with the key that was never given back, and Sarah Henshaw is murdered in her own home. The thread runs through every single one of those moments. And the question this case demands, the question we owe Sarah, is not just who did this. We know who did this. The question is, what should have happened along the way? At what point, 2016, 2018, whenever could a different outcome have been possible? I don't have a clean answer. Nobody does. But I know this. Coercive control is extraordinarily hard to prosecute. It leaves no fingerprints, no photographs, no clean forensic evidence. It requires victims to reconstruct a pattern of behavior they have been conditioned to normalize. And the system, as it currently exists, is still not built to catch it early enough to save the women it is supposed to protect. Sarah knew who Darren Hall was. She had known for years, and she made the bravest decision available to her. She chose to leave. She chose her daughters. She chose herself. And she was still failed. So if anything in this story sounds familiar in your own life, or in the life of someone close to you, please reach out. In the United Kingdom, the National Domestic Abuse Helpline is available around the clock. The number is 0800 2000 247. Free, confidential, available anytime. Sarah Henshaw was 31 years old. She had an infectious laugh. She was a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend, and she deserved so much more time